Welcome to the WalterFootball.com podcast. This is episode 294. We're doing our week 2 NFL picks against the spread. Joined once again by Jacob Camenker from the Sporting News. Jacob, how are you and how's your week 1?
I'm doing great. My week 1 was pretty good. Last year, week 1, I went a cool 5-10-1. This time around, much better. I actually flipped that, went 10-5-1. I had liked the game, the week 1 list of games pretty much, and it was I don't want to say it was easy to handicap all of them, but I feel like we were on the right side in almost every game that we picked together. And the only mistake I made was I still don't know why I did this, but I picked the Jets plus 6.5, said I wouldn't bet the game. I didn't bet the game, but on Sunday morning at like 11:30, like 90 minutes before the game, I'm like, why did I do that? And I was like, I should tweet that I'm changing my pick. And I was like, I'm not going to do that because what if they win, they cover, and then I feel bad. And then, of course, they were garbage. So, I've learned my lesson. Don't bet on bad coaches. So, anyway, that's how I feel about week 1. It was pretty good. Had a couple mistakes. And, Andrew here called the Jags money line. I believe I said that would be like setting money on fire. So I apologize for being wrong on that, Andrew. Good call. I am still in shock about that game, but credit where credit's due. You got that one right for sure, man.
Well, I literally did set my money on fire with that one because I had the Colts in all my survivor pools. So I'm all done there. Although on BetUS, you can rebuy once. So I think I'm going to do that. So hopefully I don't lose right away in week 2 again. I went 9-6-1 against the spread. So slightly worse, but plus 1090. So I'll take it. Two big picks that were lost, and I covered this on the website, but I don't I want to run this by you and see what you think. The two major picks that I lost, you were on them as well. The Colts -8 and the Buccaneers plus 3.5. So I was reviewing what we did in week 1, and I noticed that teams that had new coaches or first-time coaches and new quarterbacks that went 1-5-1 against the spread, and that applies to the Colts and the Buccaneers, who had Phillip Rivers and Tom Brady. So, obviously a small sample size, 7 games. So, what do you think about this dynamic? Is this something we should avoid or be cautious about, or just ignore going forward?
I think it's hard to say whether or not we should completely ignore it. I would tend to lean on ignore it, but I think we have to be at least a little bit cautious just because of the nature of this offseason. I think where those guys, especially the veteran new quarterbacks, haven't had as many live reps in game situations with their guys, that has impacted their ability to get them the ball. I mean, you saw it against the Saints with the Buccaneers specifically. Tom Brady at one point pointed at one of his receivers while kind of moving in the pocket, which Brady doesn't like to do anyway, and was kind of like, go here, you need to be there. And he threw the ball and the receiver didn't break back for it. And it didn't end up being anything, but that was the moment I kind of realized, it's going to take them more time than we anticipated to build chemistry. I think we assumed that the receivers were going to be, able to adjust to them quickly, but it may take a couple games. So I think it's something we need to be a little cautious of, but it's not something that I'm going to say we can't bet these guys, because depending on the matchup, and at any point they could break through, I'm comfortable betting them in certain situations.
Yeah, I think it's something that's going to correct itself eventually, but I, as of right now, I think you should be cautious about it. So I'm not going to bet heavily on these situations. And as the Big Get Even just pointed out, Bill Belichick was the one coach who prevailed in this with the new quarterback Cam Newton. Not just Belichick, but Belichick with extra time to prepare. So it's definitely good to have Belichick on your side if you're in this sort of situation. I think it's something that Bruce Arians pointed out too, where he said the one of Brady's interceptions was a miscommunication with Mike Evans. So, I think the first few weeks of the season, I'll be cautious on this. I just want to see how it progresses. So that kind of leads us into the first game, Bengals at the Browns on Thursday night. The Browns open up -7.5 down to 6. Both of these teams were in this dynamic. The Bengals, new quarterback with Joe Burrow. The Browns, new first-time head coach Kevin Stefanski. So can't learn anything from that in this game. But who do you like here?
Yeah, and I will say to that regard, I tend to think the player is probably more resilient than the coach, because the player is one player impacting the game. The coach impacts the entire team. I know you can say that Joe Burrow as the quarterback has a huge impact on the offense, and he obviously does, but Kevin Stefanski for the Browns has to manage every aspect of the game, including play calling and everything he has to do. So that's one of the reasons that I'm on the Bengals in this one. I just think the Bengals, they were close to tying the Chargers late. I felt like they had opportunities to win that game. And I think the Chargers defense is better than the Browns defense, personally. And, I don't see how the Browns are going to improve that much on a short week. I know the Browns are not as bad as they looked against the Ravens. That was just the function of playing John Harbaugh with a ton of extra time to prepare, and there being a ton of guys out with injuries for the Browns. But I'm just nervous if Mac Wilson doesn't play, the middle of that defense for the Browns is very weak. I feel like Joe Burrow can take advantage of that because he does have good receiving weapons. And I feel like Joe Mixon will be able to get a little bit more going on the ground than he was able to against the Chargers, because the Chargers secondary and defensive line are the strengths of that defense. I feel like Cleveland has a good defensive line, but I'm a little bit less bullish on their secondary. I just feel like this spread's just a little bit too high for me. Like the Browns, I know it's the Ravens, but they just got spanked. And I feel like on a short week, they should have an advantage over Cincinnati. I'm just not sure if this is a 6-point spread for me. I might give it a 4. So I feel like it's just 2 points off at this point. And Burrow did look good at times. Like you should have had a chance to win that game in overtime if Randy Bullock doesn't get hurt. So I'm going to be on the Bengals here. I'm probably going to do 1 unit on this. As I say always, I can't not bet the Thursday night game. So 1 unit is my least confident bet. But I just think the expectations are a little bit too high for the Browns, and I think Joe Burrow was better than people realize. And I say that as one of the staunchest critics of Joe Burrow, who says he needs more time to develop at the next level. So that's my thoughts at this point.
Yeah, I think this is really going to come down to the injury report. There are a lot of question marks. Like you said, Mac Wilson. Also, the Browns are missing 2 out of their top 3 cornerbacks last week, which is another reason why I bumped up the Ravens unit count to 5. And then on the other side, DJ Reader got carted off. And it sounds like he's fine, but it's a short week, so he may not be able to play. So a lot of question marks right now. So it's hard to determine a side. I guess I'll be contradictory and take the Browns, although I could eventually switch to the Bengals. A couple of things. One, I think the spread might seem too high for many people, but the advanced line on this game was Browns -7.5, so it dropped 1.5 points. So I think that's worth noting. Also, the better team on Thursday night usually has an advantage because it's short time to prepare. Usually, the better players will do better. I assume the Browns are the better team, although, maybe you can argue that the Bengals are better because, they have Adrian Green back. Joe Burrow, I think, will get better every week. Tyler Boyd's a good player, and they have some good players on their defense. So you could make the case that the Bengals are the better team, but I think the Browns probably are. And I think there's a better chance that Reader's out. So if Reader's out, the Browns should be able to run the ball pretty well. And then you have the Bengals offensive line. And I think the Bengals offensive line might be one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. And you have Myles Garrett and all those guys on Cleveland's defensive front. I think that's a big advantage for them. So right now I'm going to be on the Browns, but depending on the injury report, I could change my mind.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying about the Browns, especially their defensive line. Like Myles Garrett, if they line him up across from Bobby Hart, like, my goodness, that is going to be almost as big a disaster as last week was at times. Thank goodness Joe Burrow is mobile, or he would have been killed by Joey Bosa. So I don't hate the Browns. The number's just a little too high for me. Like, I feel like I'm lower on the Browns this year than I think you are. We were both very low on the Browns last year compared to the public, and we turned out to be right about that. I will just doubt them consistently until they prove me wrong. That's been a good strategy in the past. But yeah, this game is definitely one of the tougher ones to figure on the slate, though, I will say that.
Yeah, I wonder what your record would be if you bet the under on the Browns every single year. I know that from speaking to our proxy, Andy, on the Super Contest, he pointed out to me this summer that if you bet the over on the Chiefs every single year, he would have won with Andy Reid. So I think the opposite is true with the Browns. So yeah, you could be right. Maybe like I said, maybe the Bengals are the better team. So before we move on to Sunday, if you're watching YouTube, please hit subscribe. That would mean a lot to us. Hit the like button, notification bell, leave a comment. Like, all that would be great. We'd really appreciate it. So anyway, the first Sunday game, Rams at the Eagles. Rams open up, or Eagles, I should say, open up as 3.5-point favorites. Now the Rams are favored by a 1 point, actually 1.5 in some places. Talk about a reaction to what happened last week. The Eagles were 6-point favorites on the road, and they lost outright. So what do you think here? Did the Eagles fall to 0-2?
I think it's possible. The thing that I look at is that, I mean, I know it's the Rams on the road against the Eagles, but the Eagles are still really banged up. Their offensive line is really where the concern is. You and I both identified this in the game against Washington. And, that ended up, it started poorly, but after a certain point, Washington just got so much pressure on Carson Wentz that he couldn't do anything against them. They scored 17 points consecutively, and then were outscored 27-0 for the rest of the game. And, as someone who accidentally bet 2 units on Washington money line twice, I was very excited that happened because I forgot I had already bet on the money line, and then did it 3 days later. So when it was 17-0, was not looking good. Made the recovery though, but anyway, the plights of my inability to remember aside, I think the Rams defense was particularly impressive against the Cowboys. They have Aaron Donald as a pass rusher, and if Jason Peters and Jason Kelce are the only two normal starting offensive linemen playing for the Eagles, well, along with Isaac Soimalu, but he's kind of only okay at best. I like the idea that Donald's going to be able to get to Wentz and really put a lot of pressure on him. Jalen Ramsey is better than anything that the Washington team has on the defensive side of the ball in terms of coverage. So I think he'll eliminate one of the weapons, whoever he guards. And I just think that if Goff can get it out quick enough on the other side of the ball, the Rams are going to be able to move the ball against that Philly defense because their back seven is not very strong outside of Darius Slay. They're mostly based off pass rush. And I think if the Rams get it out quick, they should be okay. And the Rams are 11-6 against the spread as the away team since 2018 with Goff at quarterback. So I think they have a good chance here. So I'm going with the Rams for a couple units. It'll depend on the injury report, how much I ultimately put on this game. But I'm just going to continue to fade the Eagles offensive line until really the actual results of everything catch up with it. And I know this line has moved a ton, but I still just don't have faith that line's healthy.
Yeah, I think you could fade both offensive lines, though. The Rams, I think, have one of the weaker offensive lines in the NFL, too, and everyone's healthy for them. Dallas couldn't take advantage of this because Dallas only has one good pass rusher, which is DeMarcus Lawrence. I guess unless you want to count Aldon Smith, who's going to get 15 sacks, apparently, according to Chris Collinsworth. But I think that Lawrence is the only guy you can really count on for the Cowboys, whereas the Eagles have a great defensive line that can get a lot of pressure. The Eagles did a great job on the Redskins, early in that game. The Redskins couldn't do anything offensively. And I think that the Rams kind of they were trying to outsmart the Cowboys, and it worked for a while. And then the Cowboys kind of caught on to what they were doing, and the Rams couldn't really score after that. They got that quick touchdown to begin the game, and then they only scored 13 points after that, and it's they didn't really do much. A lot of their drives stalled. I feel like the same thing is going to happen here. The Eagles should be able to adjust what the Rams do quickly. I could see the Rams getting out to a 7-0 lead, or maybe in 10-0, and then just doing nothing after that. So I think that I think I'm willing to take the Eagles if Lane Johnson returns. If Lane Johnson's out again, then I'm probably going to be on the Rams with you. But if Lane Johnson's back, I think the line value we're getting with the Eagles is ridiculous. They were, like I said, there were 3.5-point favorites on the advanced line and to open, and now they're underdogs of 1.5. I love betting against week 2 overreactions, and this line moved 5 points. That's crazy to me. So right now I'm on the Eagles, but the injury report could change that.
Yeah, and I would say if Lane Johnson does play, I would probably reconsider my pick. Right now, I'm assuming that he's not going to play. I know he's close to it last week, but I'm just not sure that the Eagles are going to put him out there if he's not 100%, solely because, what ends up happening if he goes out there and gets further injured while on the field. That could be a train wreck for them for the rest of the season. So I will be interested to see how he does. But if we get to Thursday and it looks like he's playing, then I'm going to definitely have to reconsider this because you're right. The line value here is crazy.
Yeah, Kenny likes the Eagles. Kenny should not be talking about gambling, Kenny. Seriously, I I think it'll be interesting to see what happens to the injury report. I just hope we don't see Lane Johnson having DNP limited, and then questionable, and then we don't know until Sunday morning. That would be very frustrating because of super contest purposes. And we're 3-2, by the way, to begin week 1. So not bad. I think you should just survive week 1, and I think we did that. Douglas is asking what the Eagles receiving core looks like. Deshaun Jackson, Jalen Reagor, John Hightower, and that's about it until Alshon Jeffrey returns. It's not very good. They could have had CeeDee Lamb, but they chose not to. Next game, Panthers at the Buccaneers. Buccaneers open up -8. It's up to 9. So these are two teams, again, that I was talking about before, where there's a conflict here. The Panthers have a new coach and a new quarterback, and the Buccaneers have a new quarterback. So who do you like here?
Again, I'm going to fade the new coach. I think the quarterback will adjust more quickly. So I'm on the Bucs here. I'm not in love with this number, but Brady and company didn't look great last week, but they did have a few good drives where you saw like, all right, this offense can really hum if they get things going. But Brady just needs to, kind of settle in, get a little bit better. And I think against a weaker team, this should work out better for him. It also helps that Carolina is very bad against the run. Their last 17 games, they've given up 30 rushing touchdowns, which is far and away the most in the NFL by like what I believe off the top of my head is at least 10. I think they've allowed 10 more rushing touchdowns than any other team in the last 17 games, which is absolutely ridiculous. So Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette are going to be key in this one. Don't ask me how they're going to split carries. I'm going to assume it's Ronald Jones until we see more Leonard Fournette, but they should be in good shape to produce. And I think the big thing for the Bucs is they have to eliminate mistakes. Tom Brady had a couple picks last game, which was uncharacteristic. One was on a miscommunication with Mike Evans. They got to get on the same page. One was just a bad throw from Brady, very uncharacteristic. It was against a good Saints defense, though. This Panthers secondary is not very good. They lost James Bradbury, and they're just very young and don't have a lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball. So I think Brady will find more space and kind of settle for some smaller gains early on to get him into the rhythm. That should set him up well. And I just want to note that since 2003, Brady's Patriots were 42-18 against the spread after a loss. I didn't look at how many of those games came during the 2008 season when he was sidelined. But the fact of the matter is that after a loss, Brady does pretty well covering the spread. So I think he'll bring some of that magic. I hate fading Teddy Bridgewater. We talk about this every week. He's 19-5 against the spread in his last 24 starts, but I'm still going the Bucs -9, probably 1 or 2 units. It'll depend on how confident I am, but I just love fading Matt Rule. He has such little NFL experience, and I just think it's going to be very hard for him to figure out how to beat Tom Brady in his second game.
Yeah, you don't even have to worry about going quarterback over coach because the Panthers also have a quarterback, the new quarterback. So Teddy Bridgewater did play well in the opener for sure, but there could still be mistakes and miscommunications that happen, especially against a better defense. And I think Tampa's defense is better. I know they just allowed 34 to the Saints, but 7 came on a pick 6, and I think that overall they did well. Limiting Alvin Kamara, and we've seen the Buccaneers do a great job on Christian McCaffrey in the last year. So in 2 games last year, Christian McCaffrey just had 68 rushing yards in 2 games on 38 carries against the Buccaneers. That's how good Tampa Bay's defensive line is. So yeah, for me, I'm with you here on the Buccaneers. I don't think I'm going to bet this game. I think this line's a little too high. Considering that Brady might still make some mistakes with Mike Evans. If there's an unfortunate pick 6 again, that could mean the Panthers cover just flukily. But I do think the Buccaneers rebound and win this game. But I'm not going to bet this one.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. The other impact of this game is Teddy Bridgewater does not turn over the ball that much. Like, as good as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense is, like it's really hard to cover 9 if the quarterback doesn't turn the ball over. So they'd have to completely stop the Panthers on multiple occasions just to avoid them getting points without relying on turnovers. So that's always tough. But one last point before I move off of this game, the Bucs, between the turnovers and the blocked field goal, the Saints got 17 points off of not pseudo turnovers, but being put in really good field position. So I think if they can limit the field position battle, or if they can win the field position battle against the Panthers, they should be in good shape.
Yeah, the two guys colliding on the kickoff was very tilting, I should say.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, maybe they have a chance to come back, and no, like right away, no. All right, next game, Broncos at the Steelers. This line opened up, Steelers -5.5, all the way up to 7.5. It's been moving up all day. Just been watching it. So I can't say I'm surprised by this line movement based on what happened. The Steelers looked great in the first game, and then the Broncos lost. It was a close game, but they looked rather lackluster. So who do you like in this one?
Yeah, I'm not loving this game's line. Like it just feels like one that's kind of corrected itself a little bit to me. But I think I'm on the Broncos here. I don't know if I'm going to bet this game. But the Broncos, as you said, like didn't look great on Monday night. They had some good spurts, and Drew Lock moved the ball well at times, but overall they looked like they could have lost that game by a lot more if Stephen Gostkowski doesn't cost the Titans 10 points by missing 3 field goals and an extra point. I mean, he ultimately came through and got us the cover, which was nice, but it was not a good game for him. And on the flip side, the Steelers, they looked more impressive in their win over the Giants, but one thing you have to take into account is the Daniel Jones pick at the goal line. That play really swung the game because it looked like the Giants were driving to tie or cut the game to a 3-point margin. And then Jones just made an ill-advised throw under pressure. He just should have eaten that one. And, he didn't. It's a young quarterback mistake. It happens. So I think that will make a lot of people think the Steelers are even better than they are when in reality they're very strong. They're a very good team, but I'm just not sure they're a full 7.5 points better than the Broncos because the Broncos may get Cortland Sutton back. The Steelers have lost a couple of offensive linemen. We don't know what David DeCastro is doing. Zach Banner, I think, is out for the year. They're starting right tackle. He tore his ACL. James Conner might miss time, but that doesn't really have an impact because Benny Snell's better anyway. Then the only question for Denver is AJ Boye hurt and can he play? And if the answer is yes, then I think the Broncos would cover this for sure. If he's out, I'm less confident, but I'm still going to be on the Broncos. I just think this has risen a little bit too much for me, but I'm probably not going to bet this one because that Steelers defense is just so good.
It is really good against Drew Lock. It's tough, but Drew Lock had a tough matchup on Monday night. So the fact that he only made a couple of mistakes, that one play where he was almost intercepted, where he's throwing off his back foot and then he missed the receiver in the end zone. Like those are pretty bad. But I thought otherwise, he did pretty well. And Daniel Jones, he kind of did the same thing. Like he moved the ball well at times, and then he made that horrible error where he's trying to throw the ball away. Like he was trying to do the right thing. It was just that Bud Dupree was so good that he kind of batted the ball and then it fell into the arms of a Steeler player. That whole game was tilting because I don't know if you remember on the second drive when they recovered that fumble, they scored the touchdown on the fumble and Joe Judge didn't challenge it because I guess he didn't know. The Giants, I feel like they could have covered that game. It was just so many bad things happen in that game. But I'm with you here. I like the Broncos. The injuries to the Steelers offensive line is just huge. Like one of the reasons why the Steelers are, in my opinion, are one of the better teams in the NFL, like outside of their defense, is their offensive line, which is usually great. But if DeCastro's out and now Zach Banner is definitely out, there's two guys missing in the offensive line. And I think Carson Wentz can tell you what it's like to miss multiple offensive linemen, especially if you're going against a dominant defensive front. Now, I know the Broncos don't have Von Miller anymore, but they still have Jarrell Casey and Bradley Chubb and some other talented guys. So I think this could be a low-scoring game, and Steelers are I guess both teams are playing on a short week, so they don't have as much time to prepare for each other. So I think off that big win, the Steelers are feeling confident. I think there could be a bit of a letdown here. So especially with the line value we're getting with the Broncos, the advanced spread was +6 and now it's +7.5. So we're going through two key numbers. So I definitely like the Broncos.
Yeah, and the other thing I could see is Vic Fangio admitted he screwed up late in that game, not using his timeouts. I don't know what he was thinking at that point. I guess his logic was that Gostkowski had missed so many kicks that if they had to settle for a field goal, so be it. But at the same time, he could have put put the team in a situation where if they missed a field goal, all the Broncos would have to do is run out the clock. So I don't know what he was thinking, but the Broncos last year tended to play well in these scenarios where, they'd go up against a heavy favorite. I think Fangio knows a little bit how to motivate this team, even if his coaching decisions leave something to be desired sometimes. So I think he's going to look at last week and say, like, hey, guys, we should have won that game, and that's partially on me, but, like, let's go out and hit these guys in the mouth and slow them down. And I think one of their big things that they're going to be able to do is if they render the Steelers one-dimensional and get rid of that run game like they did for a good chunk of the game with Derrick Henry. Like, he didn't rip off anything big. I think they'll be able to do it with Benny Snell and or James Conner too. So if they can do that and make Big Ben have to make all the plays, that might be tough just because Ben's only in his second game back from a pretty tough elbow injury. So yeah, I just like the Broncos in this because we're getting so many key numbers, but this is going to be an interesting game to watch for sure.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned the lack of timeout at the end. I don't know like what you were thinking in that moment, but as like we both had the Broncos plus or 3 or whatever, 3.5. I had 3.5. I don't know what you had, but the clock was running out, and I was thinking in my head, I'm like, okay, if this goes to 0, if this goes to like 2 seconds, they'll just kick the field goal, obviously. And then like the Titans weren't taking a timeout, and the Broncos weren't taking a timeout. And I'm like, okay, why aren't the Broncos taking a timeout? And it kept ticking down. And then there was this clock stopped and like someone called timeout. I'm like, okay, maybe the Broncos finally realized it. And they announced just like Tennessee calls a timeout. I'm like, Tennessee calls a timeout. Like what? It's just the most bizarre thing in the world. I have no idea what Fangio was thinking. Just I like him schematically, but these in-game timeout adjustment things, like it's not the first time he's messed up here. So anyway, next game, Falcons at the Cowboys. This is another dramatic line move. The Cowboys opened up -7. It's down to 4 in some places. It's still 4.5 in others. So yeah, this is just a crazy line move. So who do you like here?
I hate this number in general. I really had trouble picking who I wanted here. The further the line goes down, I think I like the Cowboys more, but I was very torn on this one. Like, the Cowboys just match up so well against the Falcons defense. Like, the Falcons defense is not very good in the secondary, and the Cowboys have 3 real downfield weapons in Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, and Amari Cooper. The Falcons allowed 322 passing yards to the Seahawks, and they don't have as many weapons as the Cowboys. Like, I'm not the biggest Dak Prescott guy in the world, but I feel like this is a matchup he should be able to take advantage of. But at the same time, the other thing that's holding me back on betting this game is the possibility of a backdoor cover, because Matt Ryan is the king of garbage time. It's undisputed at this point. The Falcons were doing absolutely nothing last week in the passing game for so much of that game. And then I look over at the end of the game. It's like Matt Ryan is throwing for 400 yards and he has 3 100-yard receivers and has made the game closer. Now, they didn't come close to covering that. What was it? A 2-point spread, I think. But the backdoor cover possibility exists. Now, what the problem is with this line going down so much, I don't know if that possibility is there anymore. So I originally had the Falcons here, but I think I'm leaning back toward the Cowboys, but I'm really not sure. So I'm not even going to lock in my pick yet until I hear what you think, and maybe you can sway me one way or the other.
So that's interesting. So I'm kind of like you, where I looked at this line when it opened and I saw +7 or maybe even +6.5 and +6. I was like, okay, yeah, the Falcons seem very appealing here. And now that it's +4.5 or +4, it's like, okay, maybe they're not as appealing, but do you go to the other side? And this is something I've tracked over the past couple of years. When the sharp money moves a line down like this substantially, if you keep betting that same side, even at worse value, you're going to be 19-14 against the spread. That's like nothing to write home about, but it just shows that when the sharps have this sort of conviction, it's usually the right side. Now, like if obviously the spread, the record will be much better if you're getting +6 or +7, but it's still, I think it's still correct to take Atlanta if you like them at 6 or 7. And I like Atlanta here too, because the Cowboys are not a good team. Like their defense is terrible. We saw it Sunday night. The Rams are moving the chains like pretty well, even though they have a horrible offensive line. Like, granted, Dallas eventually figured them out, but the Rams had success early. The Cowboys only have 1 pass rusher. Their secondary stinks, and now Leighton Vander Esch is out. That's huge because they're also missing Sean Lee. So if Sean Lee and Vander Esch are out, like I feel like the Falcons should be able to scheme with that and should be able to hit some big plays over the middle of the field. So I think that's a big advantage. And then what you were saying about Matt Ryan's correct. Like, he always comes up big in garbage time. And like, yeah, he didn't cover against the Seahawks, but the Seahawks are a lot better than the Cowboys are. And plus this line's higher. So if Matt Ryan gets the 3 or 4, you're going to cover the spread or I guess push. So yeah, I definitely like Atlanta here despite the line move.
Okay, then I'll go back to Atlanta. I officially lock that in for the time being. This game was just very frustrating one to pick because I hate picking teams with bad defenses, and both of these don't really have great defenses. But Chris makes a good point in the comments. He said 2 teams with solid wide receiver trios and a terrible defense. I'll take the over. I will as well. The over on Bovada right now is 52.5. I'm probably not actually going to bet that because my over-under betting record is an atrocity, but I would lean on the over there. Also, if you need a Draftkings pick, I like CeeDee Lamb this week at about $4,700. With Blake Jarwin out, he's going to get a lot more targets. It's really going to be those 3 dudes and Ezekiel Elliott soaking up what I'm assuming will be something along the lines of 40 passes from Dak in a shootout. So get the cheapest of them, get CeeDee Lamb, and maybe even put in 2. If you want to check that out at Sporting News, I got a lineup up for you guys to check out.
Awesome. Yeah, I didn't even look at the prices yet, but 4,700 for CeeDee Lamb seems so cheap. So yeah, that's definitely a good pick for sure. All right, next game, the 49ers are at the Jets. This line opened up 49ers -6. It's up to 7. So do I need to talk you out of taking the Jets here?
No, I literally wrote in my notes, I'm not making the same mistake twice. Like, I still don't know why my brain was like, yeah, Adam Gase will have these guys ready. No, he won't. I knew that. I don't know. But anyway, we knew the 49ers were going to come out and have trouble with the Cardinals. They had trouble last year and made the Super Bowl. Like, that wasn't a surprise to either you or me, I don't think. I personally was not surprised to see them lose. I had them going 9-7 this year in the regular season and backdooring into the playoffs because I think they're going to have somewhat of a Super Bowl hangover. But this matchup is great for them. I mean, defensively, they should dominate the Jets offense just like the Bills did last week. They have a great pass rush. They'll get pressure on Sam Darnold. It's a lot easier to do that than to get pressure on Kyler Murray. And really, except for a massive play by Jamison Crowder, the Jets offense did nothing against the Bills last week. Like, maybe they can do a little something more against the San Francisco defense just because, they have not a gaping hole, but enough of a weakness at the number 2 corner position that you can make some plays downfield. But I just don't think that's going to happen. And, the thing I look at on offense for San Francisco, Jimmy G looked pretty good against the Cardinals. He just couldn't quite get the job done. And there were some key plays that the Cardinals made that made it difficult for that to happen. But Jimmy G has 27 starts in his career, and he's never lost back-to-back starts at all during that time. So I think that this should be an easy win for the 49ers, and I don't think covering 7 is going to be that hard. I'm somewhat surprised this line didn't move more after how bad the Jets were. So I'm going to be on the 49ers -7 for 3 to 4 units, and I wrote in my notes that that's because I'm atoning for my sin of picking Adam Gase.
Very nice. I wrote down that I'm picking the Jets on the site, and maybe that's a mistake after listening to you, and your remorse for picking them last week, but it's just way too many points for the 49ers. I don't think the 49ers are as great as they were last year. They lost several players, including DeForest Buckner. It's a big difference on the defensive line. Like, look at the amount of pressure that Kyler Murray didn't see this year in comparison to last year. They also lost Joe Staley, Emmanuel Sanders. They have a bunch of receivers who are banged up. So I think what really is going to sway me here is what we see on the injury report. There are a lot of question marks. We know Deebo Samuel's out, but will Brandon Ayuk play? If he comes back, then I think that's a big deal. George Kittle's banged up. I think he'll play, but I guess you never know. Avery Williamson was a big injury for the Jets last week. That's why I moved pretty big on the Bills late in the week. Williamson's huge for them because they lost Blake Cashman, who's their their 4th linebacker. CJ Mosley was already out. And they traded Jamal Adams. So they need players in the middle of their defense. And if Avery Williamson's out, the 49ers will basically be able to do anything they want. So if Williamson's out, I'm definitely with you on the 49ers. But if Williamson comes back and the Niners don't get some of their players back from injury, I think this could be like a low-scoring game where the the Jets cover like almost accidentally, kind of like it reminds me of 49ers at Redskins last year, where it was like, I know that was played in the deluge, but like still like, it was such a low scoring game. So I think that could happen, but I think there's a good chance I'll move to the 49ers, but I don't think I'm going to bet either side, just because I think this line's too high for Garoppolo, who, still the same mistakes. He didn't improve. Like, he still holds on the ball too long. And I think that could cost him eventually.
Yeah, no, I definitely that's fair. Garoppolo has not made the strides. Do you think Le'Veon Bell's injury plays any impact in this game? Like, I think he had checked out anyway, and I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball with or without him. So, is that how you feel?
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. Actually, I think it might help them because he's such a negative attitude in the locker room. Like, not having him around, like, Frank Gore is liked by everyone. Like, I've never heard anyone say anything negative about Frank Gore, and like giving him more carries might inspire the team to play harder, I think. So, yeah, I mean, obviously Le'Veon Bell's a better talent, but I don't think you want him around a losing team like this.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. If he was on a winning team, he'd be much better. He's one of those classic locker room dudes. I just don't trust 37-year-old Frank Gore against the 49ers front, even without lost talent, or even with the lost talent. I just think, I don't know. We'll see what ends up happening, but I'll check out the injury report later in the week. But I have to stick with the 49ers. I can't back off this. And I say that now, and I'm probably going to pick the Jets wrong every time this year. That's just probably what's going to happen.
Real quick, I wanted to ask you, if the Jets end up with the number 1 overall pick, do they take Trevor Lawrence?
I think so, probably, because Darnold has not made significant improvements or strides. He's kind of in a similar situation to Baker Mayfield, I feel like. Both of them shown promise at times, but it just hasn't been consistent enough. That if they get the number 1 pick, it might be time to say, like, hey, who wants Sam Darnold on 2-year contract? What would you give us for that?
Yeah. Right. It reminds me of Josh Rosen, with the Cardinals. I definitely think they took Trevor Lawrence. Like, Darnold's gotten worse. I don't know what's going on. Well, actually, I do know it's Adam Gase. So, I don't know why Adam Gase is still coaching there, but that needs to change. Next game, Bills at the Dolphins. Let's open up. Bills -3.5. It's up to 5.5. Lots of action coming in on the Bills, and understandably so after that impressive win week 1. So who do you like in this game?
I like the Bills. I think they're a complete team. They really dominated and smashed the Jets. Like, I think they only won by 10 points on the scoreboard, but it really was a lot more than that. Take out the Jamison Crowder play, and it's a 17-point game. And Jamison Crowder pretty much squirted through like 2 players and then got into space and outran everyone. It was really impressive. But I think that the Dolphins, like, they struggled against the Patriots defense on the road. Patriots are a poor man's version of the Bills defense in terms of talent. Their coaching edge makes it a little bit more of a probably even. But I think if Fitzpatrick threw 3 picks last week, like, is he going to regain like the Fitz magic that everyone loves to joke about? Like, I don't think so against this defense. I think even if the Dolphins limit the Bills offense, because they do have a very good secondary and they were able to limit the Patriots in the passing game, I still think Buffalo can get something going on the ground, make some big plays. Of course, the caveat to that is they have to use Devin Singletary more. I don't know why Zach Moss was in the game so much. I know that there was a lot of good reports coming out of Moss, about Moss during camp, but he averaged 1 yard a carry and still got the 3rd most red zone carries in week 1 with 7. And that just blows my mind. Singletary got 1. Singletary is far more explosive. It's fine if you're going to mix them up, but you got to give Singletary some chances in the red zone. That's one of my qualms with Sean McDermott is sometimes he trusts random players that they've drafted like more than others. Like when he put in Nathan Peterman over Tyrod Taylor, and now playing Zach Moss a ton when he's struggling near the goal line in the red zone. I don't know. That's just something that is rubbing me the wrong way about Sean McDermott. Maybe he'll change it, but anyway, I'm going Bills -5.5 for 2 to 3 units. I just think they're better than Miami at this point in time. They have a significant talent edge, and as good of a coach as Flores is, I don't think he's going to figure out a way to beat this Dolphins team.
Yeah, I don't see it either. I feel like the Bills should win this one easily. And you're right. I mean, it was just a 10-point game, but considering that Josh Allen fumbled twice near the red zone, or actually the second time was in the red zone, and then he had John Brown open for a touchdown and he missed them. And then that Crowder play where Edmonds missed a tackle and then Crowder went the distance. Yeah, it could have, instead of 27-17, it could have been like 41-10. Like, so if the Bills won 41-10, what would this line be? Would it be like 6.5? Like, think about it that way. So I think that even though this line moved from 3.5 to 5.5, I still think it's a little bit short of where it should be. And I was looking at the computer model for this game, and my eyes popped out of my head when I saw the number that they gave the Bills. They think the Bills should be favored by 11. So which is just incredible. But I think that's close. I mean, you could argue the Bills are a top 5 team in the NFL. They have a great defense. Their offensive line's good. They have amazing talent at receiver and the 2 running backs now. The only question really is Josh Allen. We know that Allen has enormous upside. It's all about will he make mistakes or not? And he did last week. And he could always fumble away a couple, a scoring opportunity, and maybe the Dolphins sneak in and cover the spread that way. That's the only way I see the Dolphins covering this game, barring crazy kickoff returns or something. So yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm going to be on the Bills.
Yeah, it just seems like the right side. I think the Bills are one of the more complete teams in the league. It looks like Rick wants you to get some of the memorabilia like I have. Congrats on your week 1 win, Rick. Trying to turn around those losing ways.
What do you mean get rid of Mario stuff? Mario is amazing. What are you talking about? I actually have a bunch of memorabilia downstairs. If we ever move into a new house, I'm gonna set up a cool display where I have I have an Aaron Rodgers signed helmet. I have a Carson Wentz signed helmet. I forget who else, but I have a couple ones. So question here, a lot of tempting road favorites. The catnip for squares. I agree. Are strong visitors still a betting trap? That's a good question, I think, because home teams don't get as many points nowadays. So what do you think about this?
Yeah, I think they're a little bit of a trap. It depends. Let's take the Bills Dolphins game, for example. The Bills are getting 5.5 as a road favorite. Yeah, they don't have to deal with the crowd, but that means Miami's getting fewer points than normal. But you still have to take into account other factors like the weather in Miami. If it's really hot, if you got a team come from a cold place, Buffalo can get cold at different times of the year. That could make an impact. Or with Denver versus Tennessee, one of the reasons I was on that game with Denver was because their home field advantage isn't about the fans, it's about the altitude. So you have to take in those factors into account when you're looking at strong road favorites. Not that the Titans are particularly strong, but yeah, I think it really depends on the team for me. I'm willing to trust the Bills because they're so rock solid in almost every aspect of the game. But if we're talking about the next team, I think we have up. I'm a little bit less willing to trust them.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it depends on the situation. If you really trust the team and they're going against inferior competition, then you shouldn't be worried. But if there's reason to believe a team the line is inflated in their favor, then yeah, I definitely agree with that. So I think there's so many high favorites on the road this week. I think some of them are going to lose for sure. Not even just against the spread. I think some of them are going to lose outright. So it really depends on the situation. But anyway, we'll move on to Vikings at Colts -3. This line opened up -2.5, and now it's up to a field goal. But there's a ton of public action on the Vikings. So the Vikings are a publicly backed road underdog. So who do you like here?
I like the Colts, and that's music to my ears. That we've got a public dog on the books right here. Look, both these teams are coming off losses, but the Colts loss was significantly worse than the Vikings loss. I always thought the Vikings were going to lose to the Packers for reasons we'll talk about later when the Packers come up. But I mean, the Colts lost to the Jaguars, who have traded away most of their talented players, and it's just how does this happen? Part of it's Gardner Minshew not turning the ball over. But there really are 3 reasons for the Colts. They had untimely turnovers. They couldn't force turnovers. And their running game wasn't that good. Once they lost Marlon Mack, I think they were kind of a little bit oh, wow, we can't really do much between the tackles. So they used more of the running backs in the passing game, which worked to an extent, but it didn't work enough. I feel like these issues are fixable, though, for Frank Reich. I trust him. He's a great coach. So I think he's going to focus on Phillip Rivers' turnovers in the run game, and if they can cut down on those things, they should be better suited to win this week. I think the Vikings are going to have to ride some of that fourth quarter momentum they built against the Packers, but that was really pseudo garbage time. They were trailing 29-10 in the fourth quarter. And then the Packers just kind of kept them at an arm's length for the rest of that game. They never came within double digits, despite piling up 34 total points. It was really more of the Packers just trying to prevent them from scoring quickly more than anything else. And I think given the youth that Minnesota has at corner, I think Rivers, a savvy veteran, should be able to take advantage of that, especially if Reich gets him to throw to T.Y. Hilton more. I think Indy's going to bounce back. The Vikings will continue to look for answers, though I do trust that Mike Zimmer will get this team turned around eventually because he's also a very good coach. I'm just still going with the Colts -3, probably only 1 unit, maybe 2, because of the public dog factor. But I do like the Colts in this circumstance.
Yeah, I feel like if you replayed Colts Jaguars 10 times, I think the Colts win more often than not. If you replayed Packers Vikings 10 times, the Packers just dumpster fired the Vikings. Like, it wasn't even close. Like, I think the Packers win 9 out of 10 times, maybe even 10 out of 10 times. Like, the Vikings look so much worse than I thought they would be. Like, I don't know what's going on with them. Like, I know they're missing Michael Pierce, which is like why the run defense isn't as good. And Daniel Hunter is also missing. So they have 2 defensive linemen who are out, which is, that's definitely a big deal, especially if you have to go against either a good quarterback or a great offensive line. And the Colts definitely have the latter. And Phillip Rivers actually played pretty decently last week, except for the 2 turnovers. So I think with the Vikings looking worse, but not just defensively, but also offensively, I think Stephon Diggs missing is a big deal. Like, we saw what the Texans look like without Hopkins, and now we see what the Vikings look like without Diggs. It's just a big downgrade that they have. And all defense have to do is worry about Adam Thielen. And I don't know where Justin Jefferson is either. Like, why is Olabisi Johnson playing over Justin Jefferson? It's just very confusing. The Vikings weren't running the ball as well as I thought they would. And I think the Colts they should have a good run defense with DeForest Buckner. Like, they just didn't seem like they were fully invested in that Jacksonville game. I think they took that for granted. I think they just believed that they were going to go into Jacksonville and win because they heard about how bad Jacksonville was going to be. So I think, coming off that loss, I feel like they're going to rebound, especially with the Vikings being a publicly backed dog. The one thing that's preventing me from going big on the Colts is that it's the dynamic I was talking about earlier, where you have a new quarterback. So, like, is Rivers going to have some miscommunications and throw interceptions because of that? Like, I think that could happen for sure, which is why I'm going to be a little conservative with this bet. But I still think the Colts are the right side, so I'm with you.
Yeah, it just makes too much sense. And one thing about Phillip Rivers too, though, he's always had interceptions throughout his career. Like, there have been times and seasons where he's totally just cut out interceptions, and it's been like, wow, he's looked great this year. But last year he threw a ton of interceptions, and there was a little bit of a problem for the Chargers, but it wasn't the major problem for the team. I feel like if he can avoid throwing multiple picks for the Colts, they should more often than not be able to win and cover. But I think you're right. They just weren't ready for Jacksonville. They took him for granted, overlooked him a little bit, even though they're a divisional rival. And Gardner Minshew just doesn't make mistakes. Like, it's always tough to play a quarterback like that. Like, you may not be the best physical talent, but that dude just does not throw interceptions. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, it's so frustrating, especially when you have Colts defense in most of your lineups. It's just very agonizing. I disagree with Doug saying they only have T.Y. Hilton. Like, Paris Campbell had a great game last week. Like, he's legit. He was a 2nd-round pick last year. He was hurt. Now he's healthy. So they have him. Jack Doyle rules. Don't forget about him. And then Nyheim Hines and Jonathan Taylor. Like, that, the Colts have a bunch of weapons on offense, plus one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. So I definitely disagree with that. All right, next game, Lions at the Packers. Packers open up -6, still -6. Kind of surprised there was no line movement here. So who do you like here?
Well, first of all, before anything, I wrote in my notes, just in all caps, vindication with a bunch of exclamation, because I've spent this whole offseason, every time on this show, we've talked about the NFC North. I've been like, the Packers are going to be good. Aaron Rodgers is going to come out angry. He's going to challenge for an MVP, and he's going to be mad that they didn't invest in him and invested in the future. And that's what it looked like in week 1 against the Vikings. And granted, he was going up against a bunch of really young corners. They don't have anyone with more than 3 years of experience on that team and multiple rookies. So he was always going to have a decent matchup there. But I think with the lack of a preseason, it was even better. But he should continue that in week 2. I mean, the Lions just let Mitch Trubisky throw for almost 250 yards and 3 touchdowns. Like, are you kidding? Like, Mitch Trubisky? Really? Like, they blew such a big lead, and part of it was because a lot of their guys left with injuries in the secondary. Justin Coleman, I think, is out for a while. He's been put on IR. He's a great slot man. I think Desmond Trufant and Jeff Okudah are hurt too. So if they don't play, like, who do they even have in the secondary? I think Amani Aruniwe is the number one guy that comes to my mind there, but I just don't see them being very competitive against Rodgers. I know the Lions have a solid offense and they may be able to move the ball on the Packers defense, but again, like we just talked about, the Packers only surrendered 10 points before the fourth quarter to Minnesota. They just kept them at that arm's length, the double-digit lead, making sure that they were in good shape to win that one all out. So I think that was their main goal at that point. But Mike Pettin said, hey, we've got this in the bag. Just let's run some clock. Our offense will take care of things. And they did. So I'm all in on the Packers at Rodgers. I think they're going to continue to play well, especially if Lazard and Valdez-Scantling continue to play well. So I'm going Packers -6 for probably 3 to 4 units. I will want to see the Detroit injury report before really locking that in. I just want to know who's playing in their secondary.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the vindication because I actually gave you credit on the site. I don't know if you saw this, but I said I have to credit Jacob Camenker for his thesis on Aaron Rodgers this year. He predicted that Rodgers would be more motivated than ever based on what the front office did in the 2020 NFL draft. Yeah, he looked like he was out for blood against the Vikings. Like he just absolutely tortured them too. So it was brutal for the Vikings, and the Lions are going to be even worse against the pass if they're missing. They're already missing Justin Coleman. Okudah, who knows if he's going to play, and then Desmond Trufant got knocked out too. That's kind of like why Trubisky caught fire at the end. The Bears are down 23-6, and I don't think they're going to come back unless the Lions are missing their top 3 corners, and that's exactly what happened. So assuming that the Lions are down at least 2 of those corners, I think Rodgers is going to have a great game again. Like Valdez-Scantling, he dropped a couple of passes, but he looked better. Alan Lazard looked better, and then Devontae Adams is just playing at the top of his game right now. So yeah, I'm right there with you. This is one of my top plays of the week. I think the Packers just destroy them. I think this line is way too low. We had a question about if this looked like a trap because the spread seems too low. But there's a ton of action on the Packers, but there's more action on some other sides like the 49ers and the Ravens and the Chiefs. So, if Vegas loses this one, it won't be as bad as if they lose one of those other teams. Yeah,
and first of all, I appreciate the credit on the site. I had not seen that, but I'm glad you enjoyed my thesis. It worked out well. But yeah, if Vegas isn't going to lose a ton on this line, it's not going to move. But I like this better than a good chunk of the lines out there this week. It might be my favorite play. If not, it's probably top 2 or 3. I just think it's a no-brainer. Just bet the Packers while Aaron Rodgers is hot. That could be the whole year, but especially at this point, like he started off well and gets another good matchup. I could easily see them hanging a ton of points on the Lions again. If they have the running game and the passing game going, this offense is going to be really hard to stop.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, hopefully it remains that way. I like to see Rodgers succeed. I always thought it was a shame that he never won more Super Bowls in Green Bay because McCarthy was just so inept. But they could definitely win this year. So based on the way he's playing. Next game, Giants at the Bears. The Bears opened up -5.5. It's still -5.5. The line hasn't moved at all. So who do you like in this game?
I like the Giants a lot. I mean, we talked a little bit about the Giants earlier when we were discussing the Steelers pick, but the Giants played much better than the score indicates against the Steelers. They had trouble running the ball, but that was against a great run defense. Daniel Jones had that killer interception on what looked like it could have been a game-tying drive or one that cut the lead to 3. So I think that they're better than people are letting on, and I don't get why the Bears are favored by this much. They barely beat Detroit in their decimated secondary. They had just 6 points before the fourth quarter. Are we really ready to trust them as 5-point favorites? Like that spread also, I'm not huge on implied spreads, but this spread implies that they're only like a 0.5 point to a point worse than the Steelers, like as a team. And I just think that's absolutely ridiculous. I think the Giants will have a much better time fighting with the Bears. I think they'll get their run game going a little bit more, which will balance their offense. And their defense held up very well in the first half against the Steelers. Big Ben eventually figured out how to break them down. But I think with Trubisky, the Bears are going to have a tougher time doing that. And with Allen Robinson seemingly unhappy with this situation there, you got to wonder how bought into this game is he going to be, or will they trade him? Like, that's a possibility too. So I think everything for me is pointing Giants plus 5.5 here. I have them down as 4 units. I just thought the Bears should be like a 2-point home favorite at most. Like, I could have even seen this game being a pick 'em. So I think we're getting a ton of line value here.
I'm glad you said pick 'em, because that was my spread that I came up with, like pick 'em. And then I saw I make my lines before I look at the actual lines. So I saw pick 'em. I made a pick 'em, but in my head I'm like, they're going to give the Bears a little bit of credit. So I thought it was going to be like 2, maybe 2.5. Then I saw 5.5. I'm like what is going on here? I don't understand like what people are thinking, making the spread so high. Last year, these two teams played in Chicago, and I believe it was a 19-14 game. The Bears won, and now the Giants are a lot better than they were last year, and the Bears, I think, are worse than they were last year. So, like, why is the spread 5.5? It just makes no sense. The computer model or DVOA says it should be -2.5, so that matches it. I think if this line were +6 and Joe Judge wasn't a first-year head coach, I think this might be my pick of the month, because I think the Bears stink. They can't really block that well. Trubisky's horrible. He got lucky last week with those 3 corners being out for Detroit. I think he's going to be worse. And the Giants' pass defense isn't as bad as people think it is. And then the Bears' defense isn't what it used to be. It's still very good. It's not great anymore. They just lost a few players. They had trouble covering tight ends, so Evan Ingram could have a nice game. It's just that, my biggest hang up is the Joe Judge thing. Like, what if he makes some more mistakes? Like, what if he botches a challenge that should be in challenge? But even still, like, this line is just way off. So I'm definitely going to be betting the Giants here. I have it down for 3 units. If I get more courage later in the week, it might be 4.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to question the first-year head coach. But I think Judge is one who should learn from his mistakes. And he's not that anyone likes losing at the NFL level, but he's a really old school guy from everything I understand. So he's going to be really motivated to win. And I think on paper, he's going to know, like, hey, we played better than we said, it looked against Pittsburgh. Let's come out, punch these guys in the mouth and try to get a win. So I have more faith in him than most. But I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of this game. I think this one and the Packers game are fighting to be my top of the week for sure.
Yeah, definitely could see that. Asking if I'm going to put a half a unit on the Giants money line. I might. I did that with the Redskins. I know you did too, or maybe you had a 1 unit on the Redskins.
I ended up with 4 by accident, but my units are pretty small though. So, like, the way I count them is pretty. 4 units for me is probably like 1 unit for you.
Okay. So yeah, I think I usually like to bet 1 or 2 underdogs. I think the Giants are going to be one of them. All right, next game. This is the last of the early games. Jaguars at the Titans. Titans open up -11. It's down to 9. So it looks like people are buying into Minshew mania once again. So are you doing that too?
I might be. It's just something like something about this line rubs me the wrong way. In that the Titans were favored by, at least with the initial line, 3 more points than the Colts were. And I know that ended up being the Colts lost, but I still feel like the Colts are a better team than the Titans. The Titans just struggled to beat the Broncos. Yeah, I know it was at home, but like, that was a team they were favored to beat by 3. Yeah, I know Steven Gostkowski was awful and, missed 10 points worth of kicks. So this final score wasn't really indicative of how the Titans played. But I just don't think that this 9 to 10 point spread is one that I want to bet on the Titans at. Tennessee would have covered 9 points just twice their past 5 outings against Jacksonville. One of them was the only game that Ryan Tannehill started, so I will give him that. I'm just not sure I'm ready to trust this defense, because I don't know if they're going to be able to force turnovers of Gardner Minshew. Like, I know they have a good defensive line and they got some pressure on Drew Lock, but they did not force him into any mistakes. Minshew has shown an ability, like I've said multiple times now on today's episode, to avoid interceptions, which is absolutely massive. He only threw 1 incompletion against the Colts, and maybe that was a mistake in their defensive scheming, and maybe the Titans will learn from that. But I just don't know if it warrants this type of spread. So we're like, right now, I'm on Jaguars +9. I'm not betting this, and I could probably be talked out of this, but I just don't have a ton of faith in the Titans right now.
Yeah, I can understand that, but I think I have less faith in the Jaguars. I think they're still the worst team in the NFL, like not counting injuries. So like if the Jets suddenly got Avery Williamson back and like some of their other guys, then yeah, if they were still out, they would be worse than the Jaguars. But I think overall the Jaguars are the worst team, so I can't really trust them here. I know the Titans are on a short work week, especially after that last second field goal, like late in the game. So that could hurt them a little bit, but I don't know. After that big win over the Colts, I feel like everyone said the Jaguars are going to be the worst team in the NFL, and they kind of proved that they weren't, sort of. So there might be a little too much celebration. Like I usually like betting against horrible teams that win a game because usually like they're not expected to and they celebrate a little too much. So I think I'm going to be on Tennessee if like Dory Jackson comes back to kind of combat the DJ Charks of the Jaguars and stuff like that. The Jaguars have a good receiving core, but you said maybe you can be talked out of Jacksonville. Like I'm not going to talk you out of Jacksonville because I'm very meek on the Titans. Like the one thing that really stands out is that 82% of the money is on the Jaguars, which is insane. Like everyone's buying the Jaguars suddenly. So I want to be contrarian and go with the Titans, but this line is so high, like -9. Like you're asking Ryan Tannehill to win by double digits. Like I don't want to see that. I don't have faith that it's going to happen more often than not. But I think in this situation, it kind of calls for it. And we're getting a little bit of line value, sort of, I guess, because this line, as I said, was 11. So I'm going to be on Tennessee. I'm just like very irrationally afraid of Gardner Minshew. Like I feel like he's going to have a great game or something. And like you said, he avoids turnovers. Like it always seems like he gets backdoor covers too. So I think that I'm going to take Tennessee, but I don't like this game at all.
Yeah, no, I don't like it either. I don't like either of these teams enough, but I think I'm starting to become a believer in Minshew's, at least his ability to cover. Like I don't think the Jaguars are going to win this game, but I do think they'll cover. If the Jaguars end up winning this game and are in first place in the AFC South, I might have to think about dressing up as Gardner Minshew for our Halloween episode this year. Last year as Andy Reid, so I'll have to find someone eventually. But yeah, no, this is probably my least favorite game on the slate because I really feel like it could go either way, and it would not surprise me.
Yeah. So Morpheus is saying Adori's on IR, he believes. I was not aware of that. I was going to look at injury report later in the week, but yeah. So obviously that would hurt the Titans. But I still think I'm going to be on them. I'm definitely not betting this game. And I think, Tennessee would be my survivor pick if I were still in. What do you say about that?
Yeah, I might go with the Packers. I just think that they should beat the Lions. Like I can't imagine the Lions winning that game, but I wouldn't hate the Titans either. Just fear of Minshew. It's just too much for me right now.
Yeah, you know what? I think you're right. I think the Packers are the better side. So I'll switch that. All right. Next game, we're going to the late afternoon games. The Redskins at the Cardinals. This line opened up Cardinals -6. It's up to 6.5. So who do you like here?
I like the Cardinals. I know Washington played really well this week, and like this is basically very close to the same line they had against the Eagles, give or take a point or two. But I think that it's understandable why they would be such underdogs here. The Cardinals just had a surprise win over the 49ers, are surprised to some. As I said earlier, you and I both kind of saw them being very competitive coming. But what Washington did last game was they took advantage of the Eagles' injuries using their pass rush. The Eagles were without three of their starting offensive linemen. They didn't play well at all because of that. Kyler Murray Carson Wentz was under so much pressure. That's not going to happen as much with Kyler Murray. Like the Arizona offensive line is no great shakes, but Murray has such better mobility than Wentz, and he has way more downfield weapons like DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Kirk, Larry Fitzgerald. All those guys can help get him out of bad situations. So I think that that's going to make it harder for the Washington defensive line to make an impact. And their secondary is pretty unproven. They did very well in the second half against the Eagles and created some key turnovers, but I don't think that happens again. And then on the offensive side of the ball for Washington, I think Dwayne Haskins is going to have a lot more trouble finding space to throw the ball against this Arizona defense. I think Patrick Peterson will do a pretty good job on Terry McLaurin. And then outside of him, it's kind of like, all right, who else are you going to rely on? Logan Thomas. Like, this is a good matchup for tight ends against Arizona, but I'm still not a huge fan of what they have in terms of a supporting cast on offense. So I think the Cardinals will win this one. I'm not going to bet a ton on this one. I got 1 or 2 units at this point. But I think Washington did what they had to do. They won in week 1. They'll be motivated to play hard in this game for sure. Ron Rivera always has his team ready, but I just think that the talent disparity between Washington and the Cardinals is too great at this point.
Yeah, I agree with that. So you have both teams coming off upsets. And I feel like the Cardinals upset over the 49ers was more legit. Like, I think you can make the case that the Cardinals might be better than the 49ers if their offensive line holds up. Like, DeAndre Hopkins just makes that team so much better. Like, we saw what Houston turned into without Hopkins, and now we see what Arizona is with Hopkins. Kind of makes you wonder what Bill O'Brien was thinking. So that was legit, but like the Redskins beating the Eagles was a byproduct of the Eagles being without 3 offensive linemen. So if the Eagles didn't have injury issues, and like, let's say the Eagles beat the Redskins by a touchdown or 10 points or whatever, this spread would be a lot higher because the Redskins would be 0-1 off a loss, and the Cardinals coming off a win over the 49ers. I think this line would be like 8.5, maybe even up to 10. So I think we're getting a decent bargain here with the Cardinals at 6.5. So yeah, I like this Cardinals team a lot. I think they're way better than the Redskins. And now that they're home, the Redskins have to travel across the country after an emotional win, like they were talking about. I think you mentioned it last week when they were winning for Ron Rivera, who was undergoing cancer treatment. So it's coming off an emotional win like that. I think it could be draining for them, and I just think they're going to be outclassed here. Cardinals are a lot better, as I said before. So I'm definitely on Arizona for about 3 units.
Yeah, I could definitely see putting more units on this one. I just like there's something about betting against Ron Rivera I don't like, especially in a new scenario. Like he's one of the few exceptions because he's coached before to the new coach rule, and he's brought like really great culture with him. So I think Washington will play hard, but yeah, I think they're gonna not. I don't know if they'll get outclassed necessarily, but I do think that they'll probably lose by double digits. It'll be more of a come down to earth moment where everyone's kind of like, all right, after that first awesome win that they got, yeah, this is more what we expected. Like they're still a few players away from being a really competitive team in the playoff race.
Yeah, I saw one comment earlier asking if the Redskins were going to win the division, and like this is not the first time I saw it. Like I saw like maybe 5 or 6 things on my Facebook wall, like saying, "Oh, are the Redskins going to win the division now?" Like, no, they're not. I think still there's a decent chance they're still the worst team in the division. Although if the Eagles don't get healthy, I think you could say the Eagles might be. So we'll see. Next game, Ravens at the Texans. The sign open up Ravens -5. It's up to 7. So who do you like in this game?
I like the Ravens. There's no reason to bet Bill O'Brien in this spot. I mean, the Ravens just smashed the Browns. The Texans just got crushed by the Chiefs. Like that explains the line movement. And I think in this case, it's warranted. Like expectations for the Texans coming into this year was that they'd continue to be competitive without DeAndre Hopkins. But like you just said, we're seeing kind of what has happened with Hopkins being gone now. And it's really just not pretty overall. And Houston's defense had trouble containing Patrick Mahomes and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Now they have to face Lamar Jackson and the triage of Mark Ingram, J.K. Dobbins, and Gus Edwards. I think they'll be able to replicate that success, and if not, improve on it, because Jackson's mobility just it's such a bad matchup for this Houston defense. I think there could be a little look-ahead factor for Baltimore, though. They're prepping for Monday Night Football in Week 3 against the Chiefs. I don't think that they'll necessarily be doing that at this point, because the game they just played was so non-competitive that they, at the end of that, may have started looking ahead to, hey, we're going to play the Texans this week. So I don't think it's a major factor, but it's something that needs to be said. But overall, the Ravens have the better offense, defense, special teams, coaching staff. Like they check off every box. There's no reason they shouldn't win this game by 7+. So I'm on the Ravens for 3 units. You could probably convince me to do more. I love fading Bill O'Brien. It's one of my favorite activities we do on this podcast.
Well, can I convince you to do less? Like I'm actually on the Texans here. Maybe I'm making a big mistake by betting Bill O'Brien, but I think that, first of all, I think this line's too high. This line opened up -5, as I said before. The advanced spread on this game was 6. So, going through 2 key numbers there. DVOA says it should be -4. My numbers say -5. So I think this not too high. Like the Ravens obviously are one of the better teams in the NFL, but are the Texans one of the worst teams in the NFL? Like, I mean, they got embarrassed by the Chiefs to open the season, but Andy Reid had extra time to prepare, and I think you could say the Chiefs are the best team in the league. So I think the Texans are not a good team, but I don't think they're one of the worst teams in the NFL. Like, they're not the Jets, they're not the Dolphins, they're not the Jaguars. I think they're going to finish like 6-10, 7-9 this year. And so a team that goes like 6-10, 7-9, I don't think this should be +7 at home again, even against the Ravens. So that's one thing. Second thing is the Texans have had more time to prepare for this game than the Ravens. Now, like, you could argue like, hey, Bill O'Brien having extra time to prepare, it doesn't mean anything, but it's, he does have assistant coaches, and Deshaun Watson is is a smart guy. So I think that having those 3 extra days could mean something. The third thing is you mentioned the look ahead factor, and I think that's definitely in play because big Monday night game. Like, why would the Ravens take the Texans seriously? But it's not only look ahead for the Ravens. I think it's look back for the Texans because last year these teams played and Baltimore absolutely embarrassed Houston. Like, it was a bloodbath. So I think Houston getting throttled like that could be a nice revenge angle for the Texans. So I think there's a chance that this game is close and the Ravens kind of like, the Ravens kind of like make some mistakes and like struggle a little bit. I know John Harbaugh teams typically don't do that, but I think this is kind of a weird situation. And I know it's hard to bet against the Ravens after what we saw last week, but that was Harbaugh having extra time to prepare. So I think that, I think things could be a little bit different this week. And we had a question earlier asking if there are going to be any traps this week. I think this is the trap.
Okay. Now, if I tell you we had this exact same conversation before week 11 last year, you were on the Texans and I tried to talk you off the ledge and then they got smacked by the Ravens. Does that change your opinion at all? I'm assuming not because this is an entirely new season, but yeah, I do like your point about them looking back. I do think that could have an impact. The look ahead, the look back. So I can see where you're coming from. I just can't bring myself to bet Bill O'Brien. Not after betting on Adam Gase last week. Like, I'm still mad at myself for that.
Yeah, I get it. And, I don't want to bet too heavily on O'Brien versus Harbaugh. So this is going to be like 1 or 2 units at most. But I do remember that conversation. I do remember how ugly that game was. But, and what's scarier is that the Texans had Hopkins in that game. Now they won't. But I think the Ravens were more motivated back then to win that game. Whereas this time, like, I don't know, like, are they going to be 100% focused for the Texans? Like maybe, but I think there's a chance that they're also, looking ahead to playing the Chiefs. So I think that could happen. So, I'm playing the motivational angle and I'm playing against betting against this public money. There's like close to 90% of the public money is on Baltimore. So I don't know. I think there's I think there's at least an argument for taking the Texans.
Yeah, no, I can get it. And the point that I think resonates with me the most is when you look back for the Ravens game last year, the Ravens were still proving themselves. So I appreciate Doug's comment here because that's how I felt when you said it at first. But yeah, no, I can get the look back. So I see where you're coming from. Like, I'm obviously not going to change sides, but if you're right and that's the reasoning that ends up being the logic behind it, I totally see it.
Yeah, so it's not a big play for me. It's not going to be in the super contest in any of our entries. So let's move on to the next game. It's another big road favorite. Chiefs at the Chargers. Line open up Chiefs -6.5 all the way up to 8.5. So who do you like in this one?
I like the Chiefs again. I know this is another look ahead game, but this is Andy Reid with extra time to prepare against a team that has a good defense, but on offense it's really not much. I mean, you're talking about the Chiefs just really contained Deshaun Watson. I'm losing my mind apparently. So they shouldn't have any issue making Tyrod Taylor uncomfortable. He only logged 16 points in their win against the Bengals. And I think a lot of people watched that game and realized like, oh yeah, this team, like, they don't have a ton of offensive firepower. Like, the weapons are there. They just don't have the quarterback yet. I think Austin Eckler is probably the X factor in this game. He had 17 catches for 151 yards against the Chiefs in 2 games last year. That's really the weakness that the Chargers can attack, is if they can get Eckler going as a pass catcher and a little bit on the ground. Because they only threw to him once last week, which was stunning. I couldn't believe they didn't throw to him more. But I still don't think they have enough to compete with the Chiefs. The Chiefs are just that good. You said they're the best team in the NFL. I agree. And I don't think the Chiefs are going to be in danger of really looking ahead too much to the Ravens, because this is a divisional rival. It's also the first time they're playing against them in SoFi Stadium. So I do think there is some motivational edge for the Chargers there. But I really think that I think the Chiefs are just too good for them. I don't think that they're going to be able to slow them down enough.
Yeah, I agree. I'm on the Chiefs here. I don't think this is as much of a look ahead because, as you said, like, first of all, Andy Reid's had extra time to prepare, which is just enormous. But you also mentioned that this is a divisional game, and these teams haven't played each other yet this year. Like, if the Chiefs had beaten the Chargers, earlier, and this is like the rematch, I think you could say this could be a look ahead, but this is a new team, and plus the Chargers are 1-0. So if the Chiefs lose this game, they're not going to be in first place in the division. So I think that's a big factor. So 2 reasons why I like the Chiefs. In addition to what you said, like, first of all, Tyrod Taylor is the quarterback. Like, Patrick Mahomes is going to score points. Like, we know that. Is Tyrod Taylor going to be able to keep pace with Patrick Mahomes? Like, I really don't think so. Like, Deshaun Watson couldn't even do it. How's Tyrod Taylor going to do it? Second, the offensive line for the Chargers, I think, is a problem. They were missing Mike Pouncey and Trey Turner against the Bengals, and the Bengals were looking like they were going to win that game until DJ Reader got hurt, and then the Chargers won. Like, I think if Reader didn't go down, I think the Chargers would have lost. If the Chargers had lost to the Bengals, like, this line might be up to 10. So I think that if the Chargers are down 2 linemen again, against Chris Jones and Frank Clark, like, the Chiefs should dominate up front. And I think that'll hurt Taylor even more. So I'm definitely with you on the Chiefs.
Yeah, and the other thing about the Chiefs, like, in that opener, L'Jarius Sneed and their cornerback group looked really good. Like, I was stunned because I was thinking that the Texans were going to throw for a lot on them, and they played so well. So I think if they can continue to do that against Tyrod Taylor, like, he's not going to have anywhere to go with the ball because he doesn't like taking deep shots anyway. So if they keep Keenan Allen covered, they should be in pretty good shape.
Yeah, I think so. Sunday night, the Patriots at the Seahawks. The Seahawks opened up -3. It was up to 4. It went to 3.5 for like a half hour today, and then it shot back up to 4. Not sure what that was about, but who do you like in this game?
This game's a weird one. I'm on the Seahawks right now. I don't know if I could bet this one, but I just think that the Seahawks are probably a more complete team than the Patriots right now. I know that's weird to say, but the Seahawks were way more aggressive on offense against the Falcons, and they absolutely torched them as a result. Russell Wilson continues to be one of the most efficient passers in NFL history. And if he continues to throw the ball 30 times a game, it's going to be really hard for opposing defensive coordinators to really compete with that because he just is so accurate and doesn't make many mistakes. And if he does start making mistakes, they can just turn to the run game and they'll be okay. But it's also strength versus strength, though. The Patriots secondary is their strong suit on defense. Seattle's passing game is their strong suit on offense. I think the Patriots will contain this, but again, Wilson's just too efficient. Like, you can't completely stop him at any point. But on the other side of the ball, the Patriots' strength is their run game, but Seattle's strength is their secondary. So then there's a strength versus weakness matchup on that side of the ball. I don't really know how that's going to go. But I think the biggest problem with the Patriots is they don't have quality receivers enough to get open against that secondary. So if they find themselves falling behind early to Russell Wilson, it's going to be a tough go of it for them. And I think as good as Cam Newton did against the Dolphins, I don't think he's going to be able to keep them in it using that kind of, dink and dunk passing game. And that's not his fault. The team just doesn't have receivers. So as much as I'd like to believe the Patriots can win, I think it's asking too much for them to go on the road, even without fans, go to the West Coast and cover here. I think the Seahawks will win this one. I'm not super convinced about it, but I think the Seahawks are the right side.
Yeah, I think so too. That mismatch you mentioned with the Patriots receivers versus the Seattle secondary, which is looking amazing to me. I think that's too much. I don't see how the Patriots are going to get open at all, which means Cam Newton's going to have to do all the work again. And he looked good against the Dolphins, scrambling around. But the Dolphins don't have a good linebacking core, whereas the Seahawks have Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright. Like, I think it's going to be tough for Cam Newton to duplicate what he did week one. Like, I think he could still have a decent game, but not as strong as he was against the Dolphins. So with that in mind, I think the Seahawks are definitely the better team. And with that, I think that the spread's just way too low. Like, I made the spread Seattle -6. DVOA says it should be 5. The computer model says it should be 4, which is, I guess, what it is. So, I'm definitely going to be in Seattle here for a few units.
Yeah, I guess I could maybe bet a unit or two on this. I just hate betting against the Patriots because then everyone in my family is like, "Why'd you bet against the Patriots?" Because if they win, it's like, "Oh, why would you ever doubt Belichick?" And I'm like, "Well, that seemed like the right thing to do." So, I might do a unit or two on this one. I just think Seattle's just the better team, like you said, and I really like what they're doing on offense this year. They're not playing it super conservative like they usually do, and if they continue to play like they did against Atlanta, I think they're going to have a pretty easy time taking home what looks like a pretty tough division.
Yeah, they look so strong right now. And I love that they're letting Russell Wilson throw for once. I think it's only after week one, but Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers look like the two front runners for MVP. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I'm excited to watch this game. I'm going to be right there with you. The Monday night game, Saints at the Raiders, Las Vegas Raiders for the first time. The line opened up Saints -4.5. It's up to 6.5. So there's a ton of money coming in on the Saints. So who do you like here?
I like the Saints. I think the Raiders are going to be motivated to open their new stadium. We talked about this a little bit last week as a potential distraction for them. As motivated as they might be, though, I just don't think their defense is good enough to contain the Saints' offense. I mean, the Saints just fared really well against a superior unit in the Buccaneers. And I think the Saints can actually slow down Josh Jacobs and really force Derek Carr to have to make plays in the passing game to beat them. And given what they were able to do to Tom Brady last week, I think it's going to be hard for Carr to do that. Maybe the motivation impacts the Raiders, but they still almost lost to the Panthers, who I think are a pretty bad team, and they give up 30 points. So I'm pretty comfortable saying that the Saints, even if they don't have Michael Thomas, which is looking possible as he deals with the high ankle sprain, even if they don't have him, I think they can still rack up a ton of points using Alvin Kamara, Emmanuel Sanders, Latavius Murray, Jared Cook. They got plenty of weapons even without Thomas. I like the Saints for, I don't know how many units yet. I have it listed as 2 to 4. If Thomas is out, I'll probably err on the lower side of that. I believe he is, so I'll probably stick with 2 at the moment.
Okay, we're going to be on opposite sides. I think the Raiders could win this game outright, but I think there's a chance they'll lose but cover. The Saints aren't. I don't think they're going to be the same team without Michael Thomas. I think that injury is so huge, and we've seen what teams are without their number one receivers. Obviously, with DeAndre Hopkins, and then the Vikings missing Stephon Diggs. Michael Thomas is, he's definitely better than Diggs, and you can argue Hopkins, like Thomas, they're both amazing. But without Thomas on the field, like suddenly, defense doesn't have to worry about him at all, so they can focus on Kamara and Emmanuel Sanders, and then what? And then what do the Saints have? Like Taysom Hill, like yeah. So I think that the Raiders could limit the Saints a bit if assuming Thomas is out. I thought they did a decent job on Christian McCaffrey last week. McCaffrey didn't get to 100 yards rushing. He only had 3 catches. So if they could like not let McCaffrey dominate them, then I think the same thing could happen with Kamara, especially if they don't have to worry about Thomas. So, with all that in mind, I think the spread's inflated. The advanced line on this game is 4.5. So this jumped up 2 points because of that Tampa victory. That Tampa victory was like, it seemed impressive. I think that really impressed a lot of people. But what if the Buccaneers just aren't as good as people thought they were because Tom Brady is still making adjustments? Like if Brady was like a veteran on that team, he wouldn't have made all those mistakes, and maybe the Buccaneers would have won that game. Or at least it would have been a lot closer. So I'm not sure how impressive that win was, like in the grand scheme of things. So, I just think the line's inflated, and DVOA says it should be 5.5. Computer model says it should be 6, which is half a point shy. So and my line, you're not going to believe this, but I came up with Saints -1.5. That factors in Thomas though. So like if Thomas were playing, it'd be definitely above 3. But yeah, it's 1.5. So yeah, I definitely like the Raiders. I guess the one thing is Trent Brown's availability. He might be questionable for this game, so I think they need him. But otherwise, I like the Raiders quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm curious. What do you think the line will be with the Michael Thomas injury confirmed? Because I think the line is off the board in some places. So I'm just curious if you think it's going to come back down. Like, you think it might come back down to 4.5 again?
If he's out, no, if he's out, I think this is factoring in him being out. And if he were playing, I think this would be a lot higher too, because the Saints just beat the Bucs, and I don't think people have any respect for the Raiders. Like I think this would be like 7 if he were playing.
Okay, that makes sense then.
Okay,
I guess I have something to think about then, because I thought it was going to come down more with Thomas being declared out, but. If it's not going to come down more, then I could maybe see switching to your side. I'll just have to do a soul search as to whether or not I believe the Raiders. Of course, if you believe the mythology, I don't have a soul because I'm a ginger. So it's going to take a long time for me to figure out.
Very nice. I wasn't aware this line was off the board. I'm looking at this app, and it doesn't have it off the board. I'm actually going to check Bookmaker right now to see if they still have a line. It looks like they have a line. It's +6 for them. So yeah, that makes sense. So maybe it's going to be +6 if he's out. I'm assuming they think he's going to be out. Like it sounds like he's going to be with a high ankle sprain, right?
Yeah, that's what it's sounding like. So I think this is definitely a spread to watch, especially since it's the Monday night one for anyone who's thinking about betting it. But yeah, if it stays around 6 and he is out, I might actually change my pick. I'm gonna have to really rethink this for sure.
Yeah. Okay, and we talked about Survivor. We're gonna say our Survivor picks every week. Unfortunately, we gave bad advice last week, and the Colts ruined everyone's chances. But if you can rebuy into a contest like you can on BetUS, I would. I was leaning toward Tennessee before, but as I said, I have an irrational fear for Minshew, and you convinced me that the Packers are the right side. If you don't want to go with the Packers, I think the Steelers might be worth a shot. If David DeCastro comes back, that definitely has to be the case. If DeCastro plays, I would take the Steelers. If you don't want to pick the Packers.
Yeah, I like both of those options as well. I like the 49ers this week as well. I think they should have a good chance to win, even if they don't cover. I just can't imagine a scenario where Adam Gase and the Jets beat the 49ers. But then again, I said the same thing last year about the Bengals beating. I can't see a scenario where the Bengals beat the Jets and put 5 units on and lost. So, take my advice with a grain of sand sometimes.
Nice. All right. I guess that's it for this week. Do you have anything to plug?
Yeah, you can head over to sportingnews.com, go to the fantasy tab. We got all our rankings up for this week. I've got my DraftKings lineups up for this week for tournaments and cash games, just my own personal picks. So you can check those out. Feel free to play them, switch up a player in there if you want, so you don't have the exact same one as me, or you can just use the whole lineup. Doesn't matter either way. And you can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Camenker. Always down to talk football. I've been tweeting out my bets. You'll be happy to know my Twitter pick record. I believe week 1 was 5-2. So if you follow me there, it looks like you're going to get the good tweeting Jacob with picks right now, and not the guy who tweeted 0-6 for like 3 straight weeks. But yeah, follow me there. We'll have some fun and keep enjoying this football season.
Well, that 0-6 guy is long gone. I think this new season is going to be very good for us, especially with our. I think a good start in super contests, like a 3-2 in week 1. I think is solid. Like I said, week 1 is just surviving. Like you don't want to start 0-5 because week 1 you just don't have all the information. So I think like going forward we're going to be better. So yeah, I'm at walterfootball.com. We're gonna have an updated 2021 NFL mock draft Wednesday morning. Updated picks throughout the week, and there are definitely going to be major changes on Saturday, as you may have seen. I went up way high on the Ravens. I think I had them for 3 units. I went to 5, or maybe it was 2 units. I went to 5. And then the Bills was 0 units up to 4. It was just based on all injury reports. which is just like as I said on the site, I was going to factor that in way more this year because I spent the entire summer just looking at past injury reports and like how they factored into the outcomes of games, and I really learned a lot. So I'm definitely going to pay way more attention to that than I have in the past. So check that out. So updates every day throughout the week. And then we're going to have a ton more fantasy rankings and stuff like that. DraftKings as well. And I'm going to echo something you said, like maybe change like one of our picks if you use a lineup, because if you don't, like, whatever, that's fine. But if we win, we're all going to tie for first and we're all going to chop the pot. But if you take the worst of our selections that you think is the worst and change it, then you might have a unique lineup. So it's all about having the unique lineup. So good luck to everyone betting in week 2. And I will talk to you next week.
All right. Sounds good. Talk to you then.
All right. Bye.